Welcome back. Thank you once again for hanging out with us. This is the one and only IT in the D Show. I'm your host, Bob Waltenspiel, hanging out. Producer, co-host extraordinaire, Randy Walker. Guest this week, the CISO whisperer himself, podcast host, all-around great guy, Caston Thomas is in the house. You can find us online, itinthed.com. And do us a favor, give us a like on the socials. Subscribe to us everywhere fine podcasts are sold. Don't forget, the 17th, today, when this podcast is being released, August 17th, we're going to be at Nancy Whiskey's, 5 o'clock until question mark. No cover, no speakers, just a bunch of IT folks hanging out. Please come see us. It's always a good time with the crew. Caston, how the hell have you been?
Doing all right, Bob. How about you?
Good. It's been a minute.
It's been 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah. What's so now here's the thing I always like about you. Every time I talk to you, there's something new on the horizon, not in a bullshit way, but a legit, like, okay, here we go. And I think you were one of the first people that introduced me to like actual zero trust products, not just the philosophy.
Yeah.
You're one of the early, you're pretty much your job. You made it your job to kind of be like 6 to 12 months ahead of the industry, which is for security, it's nearly impossible.
I paved the way for everybody else to make money.
Right. But no, how the hell do you do it? Because like, I'll get into my cynical self in a minute, but like, how the hell do you know what's going to be, I guess, the next big thing?
Years and years of experience, meaning lots and lots of mistakes. And, I've had some good mentors over the years. I've had some really, really interesting things happen to me in my career. And I got to that point where the money was good, but, it's about giving back. It's about, you've done that with IT and the D. I mean, the lives that you've changed with the meetups and with the advice that you give. You start giving and you get over the years attached to some really good people, and eagles tend to flock. And I've gotten lucky because I've run into a lot of really, really good people. A lot of them you've been on the show. Richard Steenan's probably one of the most forward thinkers. I kind of take the stuff that Richard does as far as a market analyst, and he's very good at analyzing companies, but I tend to analyze the technology more and fall back on Richard and the market analyst to tell you what's good companies. But it's really looking at things with a fresh view of things, and I've always tended to do that. I'm a little bit of a radical. I live inside the box and follow the laws and the rules, but every once in a while, when they don't make sense, that's why I fell in love with what you and David started out doing. You upset the apple cart. You did things differently. You might upset a person along the way here or there, but it was really about, in the bigger scheme of things, you were doing the right thing.
And we did things for free, so I would say we did things stupidly. Well, now that I look at
it's a lousy model, but you meet a lot of really great people.
Now that I got kids in college, I'm like, wait a minute, what did I do?
Were you ever married when we met?
Yeah, I think I was married, but I was kidless, I think. So like Gretchen just turned 19. So yeah, so we because I remember you came to the hospital when we had our first. So yeah. One of so we had Eric Willie on, one of the CISOs in town late few weeks ago, and it was one of my favorite questions, and I always like asking. It's like there's a vendor matrix in the security space that looks like a phone book, and it's carved up into about 17, 18 different boxes, and there's 20 and 30 logos in each box, covering each vertical space, if you will, for security. And within that, there's an inside sales rep or a field sales rep that lives here, that you're one of the few people in town that is on speed dial. And all I could say is, like, how the hell does anyone get to you? And B, how do you make sense of this entire just cat maze. Is that the right word? Whatever. This wreck of, I know, Randy, think you can, this wreck of just garbage. It's not really garbage, but it's too much. Like, how in the world is anybody supposed to make sense of that whole space?
I took one of those in-depth, not a personality test, but it was called the Strengths Finder test. And this is when the light bulbs went off.
You said you're an underachiever?
No,
Is that what it is?
no,
Sorry.
I didn't need a test to tell me that. It said that I had a proclivity toward, that was a long word. Yeah, I have a talent. It comes natural to me to connect the dots. And that can be people, it can be ideas, it can be technologies, it can be processes. So in my mind, look, squirrel, that kind of thing. The side effect is that my brain operates in connecting dots and seeing things from a different perspective. And so when I see something and the pieces fall together, I'm referencing a lot of things in my mind that just kind of come together. And over the years, I've developed a process for quantifying, qualifying, and really rating a lot of the things that I was doing intuitively. So it comes about from, just like I said, having a lot of experience, making a lot of mistakes, and hopefully not making those mistakes twice.
But, and that's the thing. Like, if you said yes to every POC from even a quarter of those vendors, you would be in nonstop POC world forever.
Well, you asked me what I'm doing, and I'm upsetting a lot of people, particularly a lot of the MDR vendors, EDR vendors, what I call the detect and react vendors, but also some of the status quo in the way that we go about doing our operations. And one of those things is vendor selection. I advise CISOs never to have a meeting with a vendor to learn about the technology. All of that information is available online, and if it's not, they should be able to educate someone on your team. And this comes to mind because one of the best CISOs I've ever known brought me into a meeting, and there were 18 people in the meeting. We bought lunch. Imagine that. And the number of wasted hours to talk to them about the technology to get to the end of that meeting. And the answer was, as usual, we'll get back to you. We need to talk about this. That's more lost hours because you're never going to get that whole team back together unless it's a scheduled vendor of the month meeting. And so there were all these lost hours that really didn't need to happen. What they needed to do was quantify the technology, qualify the vendor, and then map it against the business needs and the problems they have. And if it doesn't match all the above, no meeting. And
see, now there's another CISO in town, and I'm just kind of doubling down on what you're saying. There's another CISO in town that wants salesless the vendors to be completely 100% salesless, meaning give me everything self-serve. Let me demo your stuff. Let me download your stuff. Let me see what it does in my environment. And then maybe I'll call you. Maybe I won't.
Does that CISO give his own haircuts?
And I thought about it, considering I've been in 25 years now. It's been my profession. And all I thought about was the guys that are doing it, the guys and girls that are doing it wrong in terms of sales, right? Because I still talk to grown men and that basically run their mouth on green blinking lights. Look what this can do. Look, we're agentless. We're better, green. But we got a better cloud. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, who gives a shit? Like, at the end of the day,
yeah.
And it's, I want, sometimes there's days I want to not leave my profession, but I want to like smack salespeople and teach them how to, like, for crying out loud, we just, ask them what they're trying to accomplish and see if you can fit in their box.
Yeah.
And too many of them want to push these stupid features, and nobody at the end of the day gives a shit. And I wish they'd stop.
I had a meeting with a vendor. I took it anyway because of an obligation of somebody who asked me to talk to them. But I said to the guy after the first get to know you 15, 20-minute conversation, I just want to understand the architecture. There are 3 or 4 things that I'm looking for that your technology needs to do. And if it makes sense, and goes, well, I need to show you a demo. Like, I don't want a demo. I've seen every dashboard in the world and they all look alike. Now, I have one exception to that, but that's for a different day. But the whole idea of, let me show you the dashboard. Gee, imagine that. There's a column on the left and a picture in the middle and alarms at the top, and the colors are green, red, and orange. Okay, I get it. That's your dashboard. That's your monitor. That's your administrative interface. This guy was hell-bent on showing me the demo. I said, I just want to understand the architecture. His answer was, and this was a tech guy. Okay.
Are you kidding me?
He was like, the only way I can explain the architecture is with a demo. I'm like, all right. In my mind, done with these guys. They don't listen. They don't understand what I'm asking for because they've got their process. And that's the problem with vendors. They work on their time. They work on their measures. They work on their objectives. I mean, I had a meeting with the CISO a week or so ago, and he's getting rid of one of their major vendors. He's getting rid of their major vendor. Why? Because the vendor's needs come before the customer.
Well, not to talk about my former employer poorly, it rhymes with Crisco.
Oh, that one? I thought you were talking about me.
No. But I mean, it's the buy in July thing was real. Like, they're just coming off vacation right now because they train their customers to buy, I think 18 or 19% of my annual sales came in July.
Yeah.
And they're wondering why they can't get one more point of margin. And again, they're shifting their customers to buy on their time. The good thing, like a few other vendors, at least now they're annuity based, or they're, MRR service or monthly service. So they don't have to shove people into their end of quarters, end of years. That was my biggest stink with this whole industry, was making customers buy things unnaturally, because then it feels like you swindled them. To me, that's what it always. Right, we'll take 5% off. Well, why couldn't you do that last week?
And it won't be available next week. Yep.
Right. My ass. No, but that's one of my biggest beefs in this industry, is like, there's way too many talented people, way too seasoned in this industry, that just do show up and throw up meetings. And it's like, God, I wish I could just seriously choke them all and just make them.
They leave the meeting and they complain about the talent shortage, and they complain about the time that they don't have. It's like, you just spent 2.5 hours talking to a vendor that you have no business talking to, because they're just telling you what they think you want to hear, and not what you want to hear.
Just a green light just went over my head. Maybe that's a good thing that I'm competing against those people, right? I'm just saying. So you kind of come in and you're kind of like, I don't want to say you're middle person, but you're that trusted consultant that like is kind of blown the stuff up, and then you're kind of saying, hey, here's the ones that are decent, here's the ones that stink,
here's your short list.
Here's the ones that, right. But like, security's gotten, I don't want to call it weird lately, but there used to be like this whole, you got to have this, you got to have that, you got to have a firewall, you got to have your antivirus, you got to have your EDR, you got to have your your IDS, IDP, you got to have your and now it's kind of like this, like, zero trust became kind of a joke, but it's like the methodology.
Well, it wasn't a joke. We don't even know what zero trust is. Whenever anybody brings up the term zero trust now, I'm like, okay, before we get into this, what's your definition?
Right. It became a methodology, not it started being a product, and it turned into a methodology. And on top of that,
it just changed into confusion and a marketing spiel.
Yeah, it became digital transformation, right? Where it's just like, well, what the hell does that mean to you? And that's the thing now with like, SD-WAN changed the whole game with having, you being able to use low cost bandwidth providers with backups. And so, I mean, where at this point in the game, where do you start and where do you stop? Is it, some people say it's identity. I'm just curious what your take is.
Oh, where do I start? I'm writing a manifesto.
Okay.
And I'm barbecuing a lot of things that nobody else is willing to barbecue. The market analysts know where their money comes from. They know who they have to please. And so there's all these biases in our industry. And so I've come up with these 5 things that we need to do because what we're doing isn't working. Here's an example. McKinsey and Company came out in January with a report that said in 2017 that 30% of our spend was on what I call detect and react detection.
Say 3 or 30?
30%. 30%.
Okay.
It flipped. And in 2022, in 5 years, it flipped. And it's now 70% as of 2022. I don't know the numbers this year.
Wait, say that once more. 70. So now 70%.
70% of the cyber technology spend, and by that I'm talking about MDR, EDR, SIEMs, all of this stuff, endpoint protection. All these things are detect the problem. And I'm sorry, that's too late. That other 30% now is prevent. So I'm saying detect and respond isn't working. We have to do that. And I understand the whole defense in depth and all of that and needing multiple layers of protection. But we got away from preventing technology, and we're spending so much time detecting and then reacting with incident response, with forensics, and with all these things. Prevention, the attack never happens. And there's some really, really, really good preventative technologies. That next big thing is more or less what we call edge computing, but a specific type of edge computing. In fact, if I'm going to rail on the industry right now, there are 2 things that have existed in our industry for 40 or 50 years, and we've done absolutely nothing about it. When the internet was built, there was a mistake made. And Vint Cerf, the father of TCP/IP, has said this. He said, we thought it was a lab experiment. It got out of control. It got into the wild, and there was no containing it and going back and re-architecting it. And that's why I got so big on tempered. And you remember that whole zero trust story. The whole idea was you can't be on the network until you're authenticated. Trust and then connect. An adversary can come in and ping an entire network, and everybody's going to say, here I am. We've got operating systems that are out there that are saying, here I am, here's what I can do. Ask me anything and I'll open up, I'll lift my skirt and show you everything I got. And that doesn't work. So number one, and that's why identity management is so important, and that's a key piece of the conversation. How do I come in and build a trust and verify before I allow anybody to connect? I'm of the opinion we shouldn't even let anybody ping. We shouldn't respond to any packets unless it's from a known trusted source. Now, obviously, this isn't for public web, websites and home pages and commerce sites. But even so, wouldn't it be nice if we had an architecture that I couldn't even get on chase.com to pay my bills or see what my credit is until I validated? I wouldn't even be able to connect to that www until I verified who I am. It's a simple fix, but it solves everything because you can't get access to a device if you can't see it.
So we've been talking about this for a long time.
I know. Everybody talks about the weather. Nobody does anything about it.
Well, we can't.
Well, you know what? I'm aiming to change that. I mean, that first thing is trust and verify. The other thing is we've got to remove the endpoint and network from the operating system. And there are people doing that today. Tempered did it in a way, but they still had an agent. The fundamental problem why hackers can get to where they want to get is because once they've compromised the operating system by whatever means, they've got control of the device. They can hack, they can disable, they can spoof, they can redirect logs, they can do whatever they want to that endpoint, and the network and security controls that you have are irrelevant once an adversary gets access to the device. So the simple answer is, and I can show you this with statistics and using the MITRE attack framework, which I'm really, really hot on, because, here's the thing. our attackers, and we need to start learning how to think like our attackers, because we can learn a lot from our adversaries. There are things they do very well. I'm not going to argue whether it's sinister or not. They can all rot in hell for all I care, but there are some things they're really good at. One of the things they're really, really good at is they think in attack vectors and outcomes. We think in controls. We need to start defending our networks, defending our endpoints, defending our cloud resources with real edge technology. Because here's one of the great things: if I move the technology, the endpoint and network security out of the endpoint, out of the operating system, out of the device, even if that device gets compromised, there's no lateral movement. They can't see anything else in the network because they can't compromise the security stack because it's not under the control of the operating system.
Haven't we been trying though to think like? Haven't we been trying to think like that with red team, blue team?
No.
Doing like, you don't think?
That's all reaction. That's all simulating. I'm talking about fundamentally preventing things. I'm making a proposition that doing three things technologically, we can prevent, our industry could prevent 90% of all currently successful 0 days, ransomware, and phishing attacks.
I know two of them.
Go.
I think. Go on. No, go on.
So, number one, identity. All right.
That was one.
But specific identity, passwordless, with FIDO2 and or biometrics. Remove the possibility of failure and put it on, I won't do my Hello Kitty, one of these guys. YubiKey, simple. I'm using it everywhere I can. I can't wait till Chase and American Express and Wells Fargo get these things so that I can log onto my account. It ain't going to do it unless I got that 54-digit key going across telling them that I am who I am and I'm holding the key. You know, it's a simple process. So that's number one. Number two, what's number two?
My number two is 2FA. So you blended it into one. So
that identity, trust before allowing access. So the next one is remove the browser, remove the email from the device. Using something like, it's called browser and email isolation. So I'm running a virtual browser in the cloud, and all it's doing is shipping me the screens and links to click. That's all I get. The hacker, it's impossible for the adversary to get access to the disk system or the operating system. Game over. I know.
Wasn't Citrix trying to do this 20 years ago?
I'm sorry?
Wasn't Citrix trying to do this 25 years ago?
Yeah. But we give the users, because users say, well, it's slower than it used to be yesterday. Oh, okay. We're just going to open up your system to every adversary and have a colonial pipeline explode on us because things are running a little slower today. There are ways to architect that, but we've got to get that mindset of security first. We talk security first, and it's a good game, but where's the prevention? And that number three is removing the security and endpoint stack from the operating system. Not running an agent, not running under the control of the operating system, running on a different chipset on the board. There are a lot of IoT manufacturers and OT manufacturers, medical device manufacturers that are starting to build chips specifically for that. Microsoft has a relationship with a company that allows them to remove the Azure stack and put it on a different chip on the motherboard. Boom, done. So we're coming into that with some of the new OT technology and a lot of the IT. Apple's moving in that direction. Google's moving in that direction by having these communication-specific chipsets that are running the security stack. So even if iOS gets compromised, they can't get access to the OS unless somebody gives them permission to. Now, this isn't going to stop nation-state hacks, but it's going to stop everybody else.
Yeah. You don't have to name names, but is there anybody in town doing it 99% right?
Anybody in town? You mean anybody in our industry?
Yeah. No, not just in our industry, but like customer, supplier, anybody, end users.
Yeah, there are.
There are a few.
I'm not at
Okay.
liberty to say.
No,
Yeah.
please don't call them out. But yeah, I was just curious. I wanted to say yes. I want there because there's way too many smart people in this town.
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
You know, I'd have Eric Willie back on. He'll tell you all about it.
no, but like, budget constraints, and a lot of people, security is a cost center. It's not it's not a business enabler. So a lot of really smart people get handcuffed because they can't. Right. That's my big issue with it is
I can't solve the money problem. I can solve the technology problem.
Sure. But there was a time in my life where I used to talk about poor man zero trust, and it was really it wasn't as detailed. I wasn't getting into the browsers or anything, but it was, save everything in OneDrive, two-factor authentication, just make sure that if you drop your laptop in a river, you can, you're not going to lose any data, if password gets compromised, you got two-factor, you know what I mean? Just like, the bare bone basics. But I'm talking, this was for small, 50-seat companies that never even thought of that.
Well, we're spinning so fast. We're working hard and not smart. I saw a really, really great study, and the first thing I do when I see a study, and this is one of the things I do, is I look at it very suspect. Okay, who sponsored it? What's the agenda? I'll often go to the conclusions first and find out what they're recommending, and that'll tell me, what, this is paid. This is paid for study. But Fastly did the study. I can't find anything wrong with the study or the results. The methodology looks really solid. But they indicated that as many as 70% of all cybersecurity projects are not complete within 6 months.
What?
Yeah. Well, other priorities.
Yeah.
You see so many technologies historically that get purchased, but then they sit and they collect dust.
Dead software is a thing. Yeah.
And so, just finishing those projects, because if you've got a security control, back to controls, but that's where we are, that isn't complete and isn't foundationally sound, doing the things that it was designed to do during the concept and design development stage, you've got gaps. Guess what? Those gaps are going to be discovered. It's low-hanging fruit for the adversaries. They're going to get in using those. And you see that in so many places. The reason that firewalls are preventative. They do great prevention, but they get so complex. People get so busy. The original design of the firewall, something goes in on Friday night. The engineer has a hot date, says, well, I'm just going to open it up for a minute. It'll get it working over the weekend. I'll make a change on Monday. Monday comes in, the boss calls him into the office. It's forgotten. Never happens. Now, that problem, I call it configuration drift. Data center people get that. Configuration drift is we designed it this way, but then everything changed.
See, my biggest issue I'm seeing, at least today, is these larger companies that grow via acquisition and have IT sprawl and have dead software and replicated, and their enterprise architecture is all over the board. And they try to consolidate, and they have leases on 16 data centers that they can't get rid of because they're stuck in the, they're trying to, because, they're trying to get legal involved, but that's almost their biggest Achilles heel is it's just legacy systems stacked on top of legacy systems that they don't know exist. And they're trying to, they almost wish they could just blow the shit up and start over tomorrow. And it would probably save them years, of getting to where they need to be. But nobody does it because they can't. You can't stop business.
There's a lot of finger pointing too. And from a vendor standpoint, there's a whole lot of money at continuing putting Band-Aids on this thing.
Sure. That's why I was going to make a thing about that's why they don't cure cancer. Come on. Too much money in the medicine.
Well, hey,
it's true though. It's true.
I talk about, and Tempered adopted that standard, the IETF's RFC 7401, I think it was. Never got adopted. You know why? Because the big guys, if that standard had been adopted, it would have cannibalized probably 50 to 80% of their existing endpoint and network revenue. Oh yeah,
they were fighting.
Focused. I mean, talk about cynical. Here I am.
Right. Speaking of which, me and my wife watched a movie last night on Netflix. I think it's called Heart of Stone, Stone of Hearts. It's got Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman in it, and it's a technology movie, and it was a fantastic movie. It's a spy movie. I'm sorry, fantastic for Netflix with low expectations. Let's be frank. And I was so angry at one point. There was like the quantum computer that could hack into anything in the world instantaneously, military included. Didn't matter what it was. Whoever owned it owned the world.
They couldn't attack my stuff because it's invisible.
See, but I got so angry because these rival groups are trying to get the quantum computer because they want world supremacy, and they removed it from the data center, the quantum computer it was in a blimp in a floating data center, and the whole thing went down. And I threw my remote. And my wife's like, "What's the matter?" And I go, "It's bullshit." And I'm like, "Why?" And I go, "Nobody would ever build anything with a single point of failure." And I'm like, she looked at me like I'm a complete idiot. And I'm like, "That should have been distributed across multiple clouds." And she's looking at me like, "Well, you just watch the goddamn movie." Like,
oh, for different reasons. I always hated the net.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them out there.
She was guaranteed to fall down every time she'd run away. It's like
Swordfish, all of them. At least Gal Gadot used a Tor browser in this one, so they must have called somebody from Black Hat to like make sure that it wasn't complete bullshit. It was a lot of mess. It was a I don't know. It's worth a cheesy watch on a Sunday night. I guess I'll give it that. So you were. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. But you got into the radio game a little bit, and I haven't heard your voice on the air for a while. Talk to me about your stint on WJR doing the Internet Advisor, because that was big shoes.
Oh, I just realized next week is Foster Braun's birthday.
Is it really? Yeah. He was one of the honestly, he was one of the sweetheartest human beings I've ever met in my life. That
there are people who are real. He was a faith-filled man. I've said many times that he had more impact on me than any man in my life other than my father. He was great. He had the greatest voice. I did an interview with him, a 3-part interview, and the last one was about a month before he died. And we covered his life, his career, his faith, and the process of dying. And I go back and listen to that every once in a while because it is one of the greatest lessons about how to live your life. But even with about a month to live, in hindsight, not knowing that at the time, because he had spinal cancer for 9 years and just kept getting these miraculous recoveries. His voice still put mine to shame. It's so
humble. All of ours. He was the king. So we did. I just looked it up right now. Episode 274, Saying Goodbye with Foster Braun. That's the only podcast I've ever cried on.
I remember that, man. You had me going too.
There's Randy's there too. And oh my God, I had the worst curly mustache going on at that point. It was horrible.
You go,
No, but one of my favorite things about that the internet, it wasn't the show itself, because the show, it's like you talk for 3 minutes and then it was jazz music and commercials, but it was that second hour when all like my dad's age folks would call and they can't connect brother printer. And I would just sit there, and I'm sitting behind the scene just going, "Tell him to throw the effer out. Tell him to throw it out." And like, there's such patient sweethearts, and everybody's like, "Well, you have to redo the driver." And I go, "Tell him to throw it out." Like, they finally just like, "I'm out. I can't do this."
Well, the commonality of everybody on the show is we were cheap SOBs too.
Fair.
You know me, I drive my cars till there's 250,000 miles on them, and you're making fun of me.
Oh, no, that's smart. It's funny. Somebody, I just had he's a data scientist at GM, and we invited him out. He's an old friend of mine, bowling friend, and we invited him to an event we had. And he goes, "What's funny?" He goes, I've got the same car. I just hit like 180,000 miles, and I haven't had a car payment in like 5 years. He goes, "You know who told me not to do that shit?" He goes, "You." I go, oh my God, you took my advice back then? He goes, yep. I haven't seen him in years. And, it's just funny. Like it kind of hit me. It's like, God, it's like the stuff that you tell people. It's funny, the shit that sticks and, the stuff you forget.
So now I'm realizing that you weren't sincere when you were giving me hell about that.
Absolutely not. No, we have, my wife's got a year left on her car to pay, and then we'll have 5 cars in this house and no car payment. So nice. even though my daughter's car needed bright tires and brakes and rotors and struts and springs, and for, I don't want to tell you what that cost, but at least I don't have a car payment, right? Yeah. At least I don't have a car note. Both sides to it. There's 2 sides.
There you go. With all the tracking stuff that they're putting in cars and some of the announcements that Ford made, I'm not going to buy a car made after 2012.
That 76 Cadillac in my garage is going to come in handy.
Oh man, you aren't kidding.
You
need to EM proof that. EMT proof it.
I think it is, isn't it?
No, if the battery's connected, it's not.
Oh, what the hell am I supposed to do? Ride a bike?
You remember that movie, Enemy of the State? God, that was a great movie.
Will Smith?
Yeah.
He always called it Enemy of the State.
Office in Bernoulli box. Wonder what it would take to build a Bernoulli box in my garage. The whole garage is a Bernoulli box.
I think you get raided before that got finished. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be fun. All I need is a pallet full of chicken wire, and I'm in business.
Right. So when are you getting back into broadcasting? What do you what's next?
I had these big plans. I had big plans after radio. I have just life gets in the way.
That I can attest to that. Trust me, when COVID killed the podcast studios, and Randy and I've been like, I finally got the bug back.
Not COVID, the lockdowns killed it.
Oh yeah, fair. But then you go looking for space, and you're like, oh my God, shit's expensive now, and trying to figure out just all I want to do is break even, because we had so much fun doing that.
Space is expensive. Dinner's expensive.
Oh, it's nuts.
Yikes.
Cars are nuts. Yeah. I saw was it the PBD podcast where he was doing the math of like 3 years ago, an average price of a car was like $30,000.
Yeah.
And the car note was like $450, and it was at 3%. He goes, now the average price of a brand new car is like $45,000 and 7%. And he goes, it went from $450 to like $890.
I know, we went from like 2% interest rates to 7%, and Connie can't sell any houses because there's no inventory, and they're all going for, $20,000 over asking.
And I can't move. I mean, I guess those are first world problems, right? Oh, my wife can't sell any houses. Oh, I can't move out of my nice house.
I'm busted.
Well, everybody else says, well, Randy's got a middle finger to me because he's in his, he acknowledged it. Yeah.
Oh.
So you said you were going to interview me. I don't know what the hell that meant. I'm dying to know.
Oh gosh. Interviewing you, man. There's so much to ask you. I mean, going back to the days when IT and the D started, I'm trying to remember, when did we meet?
It had to have been, because I got married in 2002. Gretchen was born in 2004, so sometime in 2003 maybe.
Yeah, but how did
I couldn't tell you how. I couldn't tell you how.
Oh well, I guess I'm not that memorable after all.
I don't remember what I ate for lunch.
I was just kind of kidding when I said I wanted to interview you, but you've got this fascinating perspective, and you're outside the box. And, without getting into psychoanalyzing you, you've got a fresh way of seeing the world. And it didn't come from your dad, per se. Was it your mom who gave you that? I mean, where did it come from?
I don't know. I look at it, immigrant parents, all my cousins, like basically I don't know if you knew, I don't know if I told you how, like my grandparents were World War II refugees from Germany. My parents were born in Yugoslavia because they went down the river. There's 500,000 Germans. There's a whole story on Wikipedia explaining it. And they all went to like 13 cities in the U.S. They went to Chicago, and then half of them, they went to Niagara Falls for vacation. They said, holy shit, houses are half price in Detroit, and they settled here. Half the family. So I got half my family still in Chicago.
Yeah.
But all my cousins either run stuff, or they're CFOs, or they're engineers. Like there's none of my cousins are like, I wouldn't call a bum. I'm probably the most bum out of all of them.
But they're not all like you.
Uh, no, I mean they're all like German engineer, analytical.
Yeah.
They're sharp. They're all smart. Like I never considered I always different kind of smart. I was never like I was never gonna code. I was never gonna do anything I was never a propeller head.
So how did you, of all people, how did you fall off of the ox cart? Did you bump your head?
I it's adopted, maybe. That's I think it's the first time I've announced that. Yeah. No, it's probably it. I don't know. The weird thing is this is getting a little too personal, but like I through 23andMe, I found out who my biological side was on my father's side.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the weird thing is I have a half sister and a half brother. I don't think I've announced this. This is the first. I haven't even put this on Facebook. But he went to Russia when he was 50 and brought back a bride and had a couple kids. So like I have a 27 and a 28-year-old half brother and half sister. And as soon as they met me, they like, oh my God, the hair standing up on the back of my neck. You don't talk like him because your voice is different, right? But your mannerisms. He DJ'd weddings. He was a sales guy. He was the loudest guy in the room. He would always sing stupid songs. Like karaoke was never serious. It was always something dumb, which is what and I'm just looking at this going, what a strange thing that you don't even realize this was my path until you found out that was my path. So yeah, it's been a pretty crazy last 4, 5, 6 months.
Where's the part where you got real personal? That didn't reveal deep dark secrets.
No, it's all good stuff. I don't mind. Like it's funny because people are like, "Oh my God, you're adopted. You never told me." It's not like I introduced myself going, "Hey, I'm Bob and I'm adopted." It's like it comes out in conversation. I don't, it's all good. It's just part of who you are.
That reminds me of a joke I can't tell.
Good. Don't tell me at breakfast next week.
I'll tell you next time we're together and nobody's listening.
Right. But hey, I could sit and talk to you all night, but we're gonna keep you on time.
Thank you.
So if you don't know who Caston Thomas is, look him up on LinkedIn. He'll probably accept your connection. Maybe
I'm getting kind of picky lately.
Are you really? As long as they're local, I'm accepting.
Even if they're financial analysts wanting to have a conversation.
No, then I don't. If they work, as long as they're from Detroit, I'm connecting. But look him up, Caston Thomas on LinkedIn. He's one of the best guys I know, and I'm really lucky to be able to spend time with it today.
I can't believe you say these nice things about me. I really don't fit the.
It's true. But we're going to wrap things up for the IT and the D show on behalf of Bob and Randy. Do us all a favor. Drink up your drinks. Get your phone numbers. You don't got to go home. You just got to get the hell out of here. See you next week. Drive careful. Beat it.
See you at Nancy's.